Rich parents hired a girl for their shy son, but what she discovered on the first night will shock you. A great love story of how she transformed a shy man into a loving partner. Hi, my beautiful family. It's your Mr. Peter. Before anything else, let me speak this prayer over your life. Soft, powerful, and filled with love just for you. May peace settle into your heart like a quiet song. May today be softer than yesterday, and may your burdens feel lighter than you feared. I pray that love visits you in gentle ways, a kind word, a sweet memory, a smile that stays. May healing flow through every part of your life, and may joy find you when you least expect it. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. You are loved more than words can ever say. Now, Binta says hi, and she's sending all her love to you. She's so thankful for every single prayer you've whispered for me. She smiled and said, "Tell them I feel their kindness, but also tell them this. Why are some of you leaving the story in the middle? That truly hurts us." Family, please don't leave halfway. If you love me, stay until the end. We feel it when you're with us, and we feel it when you're not. I know some of you have said you don't enjoy the introductions, and that's okay. You can skip this part, but please don't skip the story. I'm writing every word only for you. And now, tell me honestly, how did James do today? He's doing his best to carry my heart with his voice. If it touched you, let us know. If something felt off, I'm always here to listen. Now please, with love, not pressure, like this video. Drop a kind comment. Share it with someone who needs it. Let the world feel the beauty of this family, strong, faithful, and full of heart. Let's begin. With all my love, always.
Thunder crashed against the towering windows of the Baumann mansion as Eleanor Baumann paced frantically across the cold marble floor. Her husband, Richard, slumped over his mahogany desk, pressing his palms against his temples as if trying to crush away years of desperate worry. "This can't continue, Richard," Eleanor's voice cracked with raw maternal anguish. "Our son is 28 years old, and he's never, God help us, he's never even touched a woman's hand without having a panic attack. What kind of existence is this for our beautiful boy?" Richard's tortured gaze met his wife's, reflecting years of helpless desperation. Mac, brilliant, compassionate, heir to hundreds of millions, lived like a ghost in his own mansion. One glimpse of feminine company triggered panic attacks, so violent he'd collapse, gasping and trembling like a wounded animal. "The doctors say his condition stems from his childhood isolation," Richard said softly. "All those years of keeping him protected, having only male tutors and staff. We created this problem, Eleanor, and now we don't know how to fix it." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she remembered her precious boy, so gentle, so innocent, so terrified of the world beyond these walls. "I found someone," she said suddenly, pulling a folder from her purse. "A nurse, Tacy Cude. She's young, beautiful, and most importantly, she's experienced in helping people with difficulties." Richard frowned. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "We tell her Mac was in an accident, that he needs care and companionship during his recovery. We don't mention his problem with women. Maybe if she's here naturally as a caregiver, he won't feel so threatened. Maybe she can help him see that women aren't something to fear." 3 hours later, Tacy Cude stood at the imposing front gates of the Baumann estate, raindrops glistening on her dark skin as she gazed up at the mansion that seemed to stretch endlessly into the gray sky. At 26, she had seen enough wealthy families to know that money often came with its own special kind of suffering, but the urgency in Mrs. Baumann's voice over the phone had touched something deep in her heart. "A young man in need of care," she murmured to herself, adjusting the strap of her medical bag. someone who's been hurt and needs healing. The massive front door opened before she could even ring the bell, revealing an elderly butler whose kind eyes immediately put her at ease. "Miss Cude, I presume? I'm Alfred. The family has been eagerly awaiting your arrival." As Alfred led her through corridors lined with priceless artwork and antique furniture, Tacy couldn't help but wonder what kind of accident could have befallen someone in such a protected environment. The house felt more like a museum than a home, beautiful but cold, lacking the warmth that came from genuine human connection. "Master Mac is in the library," Alfred said gently as they approached a set of heavy wooden doors. Well, perhaps it's best if you see for yourself. He's a good man, Miss Cude, the best I've ever known. He just needs someone to see past his difficulties." Before Tacy could ask what he meant, Alfred knocked softly and pushed open the doors. The library was breathtaking. Endless shelves of leather-bound treasures, plush reading chairs positioned near a roaring fireplace, and cathedral windows revealing the estate's magnificent gardens. Yet Tacy's attention was instantly, magnetically drawn to the figure hunched over a telescope. Mac Bauman shattered every expectation. Tall and elegantly lean, with chocolate brown hair tumbling across his forehead and the most stunning emerald eyes she'd ever witnessed. But his physical beauty paled beside something far more captivating, the way he froze completely upon seeing her, hands trembling on the telescope, face flushing deep crimson as words died in his throat. I Mac stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked around frantically, as if searching for an escape route, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Tacy's medical training immediately kicked in. This wasn't the behavior of someone recovering from a physical accident. This was pure, overwhelming anxiety. She moved slowly, keeping her voice soft and non-threatening. "Hello, Mac. I'm Tacy Cude. Your parents asked me to come and spend some time with you." She stayed near the door, giving him plenty of space. "I love your telescope. Are you interested in astronomy?" Mac's panicked expression softened slightly at the mention of his beloved hobby. Yes, he managed, his voice still shaking. I was looking at Jupiter. It's visible today despite the clouds." "That's wonderful," Tacy said with genuine enthusiasm. "I've always been fascinated by the stars, but I've never had the chance to look through a real telescope. Would you mind if I sat down? I promise I'll stay right here by the door." The fact that she wasn't approaching him seemed to calm Mac considerably. He nodded nervously and watched as she settled into a chair near the entrance, her movements graceful and unthreatening. "You're very beautiful," Mac blurted out suddenly, then immediately turned scarlet. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I shouldn't have. I'm so sorry." Tacy's heart melted at his innocent honesty. There was something so pure about his embarrassment, so genuine about his apology. This wasn't a man trying to use a pickup line. This was someone who had spoken from his heart without thinking, and was now mortified by his own boldness. "Thank you, Mac. That's very sweet of you to say." She smiled warmly, watching as his shoulders relaxed slightly. "You seem perfectly healthy to me. Can you tell me about your accident? Your parents mentioned you needed care during your recovery." Mac looked confused, his brow furrowing as he tried to understand what she meant. "Accident? I haven't had any accident. I'm perfectly fine, physically speaking." A cold realization began to settle in Tacy's stomach. She had been lied to, but looking at Mac's innocent, confused expression, she realized he wasn't part of any deception. He was as puzzled by her presence as she was beginning to be by the circumstances that brought her here. "Mac," she said gently, "do you know why your parents hired me?" He shook his head, his green eyes wide with genuine confusion. I thought maybe they wanted me to have a friend. I don't have any friends. Well, except for Alfred, but he's paid to be nice to me." The simple honesty of his statement broke Tacy's heart. Here was a man who had everything money could buy, yet he was so isolated, so starved for genuine human connection, that he couldn't even imagine someone might want to spend time with him without being paid for it. "I'd like to be your friend, Mac," she said softly. "Not because anyone is paying me to be, but because I can already tell you're a kind, interesting person. Would you like that?" Mac's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment he looked like the lonely little boy he must have been, hidden away in this beautiful prison, protected from the world, but also cut off from all the joy and connection that made life worth living. You really want to be my friend?" he asked, his voice breaking with emotion. "More than anything," Tacy replied, and realized she meant it completely. As the afternoon rain continued to fall against the library windows, something magical began to unfold. Mac, still keeping his distance but gradually relaxing, began to tell Tacy about his stars, his books, his quiet life within these walls. And Tacy, forgetting completely about whatever deception had brought her here, found herself captivated by this gentle soul who looked at the world with such wonder and innocence. Neither of them realized that they were already falling in love, that this moment, in this quiet library with rain pattering against the windows, was the beginning of a love story that would change both their lives forever. When Alfred brought them tea as the sun began to set, he found them sitting closer together, Mac actually managing to speak in full sentences without stammering, and Tacy laughing at one of his shy jokes about the constellations. The butler smiled to himself, recognizing the first stirrings of something beautiful and pure, exactly what this lonely house had been waiting for. Chapter 2. Gentle Hearts. The morning sun painted golden streams through the gauze curtains of Tacy's guest room. She had agreed to stay a week, supposedly to assess Mac's medical needs, but truthfully because his vulnerable innocence had awakened something fierce and protective in her soul. Ethereal piano music drifted through the mansion's corridors like a siren's call. Following the haunting melody, she discovered Mac in a stunning music room, his fingers dancing across ivory keys with breathtaking grace. He was playing something achingly beautiful, a piece that spoke of profound loneliness, yet whispered of desperate hope, as if a tortured soul was calling across the darkness for salvation. Tacy stood in the doorway, mesmerized. This was a different side of Mac, confident, expressive, free. When he played, all his anxiety seemed to melt away, replaced by pure artistic passion. The piece he was playing spoke of loneliness and longing, but also of hope, as if the musician was calling out to someone, waiting for an answer. When the last note faded away, Mac finally noticed her and immediately blushed, his hands jerking away from the keys as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. "I'm sorry," he stammered, starting to rise from the piano bench. "I didn't mean to wake you. I know it's early, but I couldn't sleep and music helps me think, and I shouldn't have. I'll stop." "Please don't stop," Tacy said quickly, stepping into the room. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Did you write it yourself?" Mac's eyes widened in surprise. You liked it? Really? I loved it. It made me feel less alone." The words came out before she could stop them, more honest than she had intended to be. Something shifted in Mac's expression, a recognition perhaps of a kindred spirit. "You feel alone too?" he asked softly. Tacy moved closer, drawn by the genuine concern in his voice. "Sometimes. I spend all day taking care of other people, making sure they're comfortable and safe. But when I go home to my apartment," she shrugged, not wanting to burden him with her own loneliness. "It's too quiet," Mac finished for her. "And you wonder if anyone would even notice if you just disappeared." Their eyes met across the space between them, and for a moment the connection was so intense that Tacy felt her breath catch. Here was someone who truly understood the ache of isolation, the weight of being surrounded by people, yet feeling completely alone. "Would you play something else?" she asked, settling into a nearby chair. "Something happy this time?" Mac's face lit up with a smile so radiant it took her breath away. When he smiled like that, his whole being seemed to glow with an inner light that made him absolutely beautiful. He began to play again, this time something light and playful, his fingers dancing across the keys with obvious joy. As he played, he started to hum along, his voice rich and warm. Gradually, the humming became soft singing, and Tacy realized he was making up words as he went. A silly song about a butterfly who couldn't decide which flower was prettiest. Despite herself, Tacy began to giggle. The song was so absurd, so childlike and innocent, that she couldn't help but be charmed. Mac's singing grew more animated as he heard her laughter, and soon they were both caught up in the joy of the moment. "You have a beautiful voice," Tacy said when the song ended, "and you're very funny when you're not being shy." Mac ducked his head, pleased but embarrassed by the compliment. "I've never sung for anyone before. Only Alfred has ever heard me play, and he probably just tolerates it because he has to." "I doubt that." "You have real talent, Mac. Have you ever thought about sharing your music with the world?" The suggestion seemed to terrify him. "Oh no, I couldn't. They would stare at me and I'd freeze up, and everyone would think I was strange. It's better if I just play for myself." Tacy's heart ached for him. Here was someone with so much beauty to offer the world, yet he was trapped by his own fears. "Well," she said gently, "you can play for me anytime you want. I promise I'll never think you're strange." The breakfast that followed was a revelation for both of them. Mac, gradually relaxing in Tacy's presence, began to open up about his life. He told her about his childhood, spent mostly alone with tutors and books, his parents too busy with their business empire to spend much time with him. He spoke about his love of reading, his fascination with the stars, his dream of maybe someday traveling to see the northern lights. "What about you?" he asked shyly as Alfred served them fresh fruit and pastries. "What did you want to be when you were little?" Tacy smiled, touched by his genuine interest. "A doctor, actually. I wanted to help people, to heal them. But medical school was too expensive, so I became a nurse instead. I love what I do, but sometimes I wonder what might have been different." Mac's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "You could still become a doctor. I mean, if that's what you really want. It's never too late, right? Med school costs a fortune, Mac, and I'd have to stop working to study full-time. I can barely afford my apartment as it is." "But what if you didn't have to worry about money?" Mac said eagerly, then immediately looked stricken. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to presume, or I just hate the thought of someone as kind and smart as you not getting to follow their dreams because of something as stupid as money." Tacy was moved by his genuine concern for her dreams. Most wealthy people she'd encountered either dismissed her struggles or offered superficial sympathy. But Mac seemed genuinely distressed that financial barriers were keeping her from her goals. His reaction reminded her why she'd become a nurse in the first place. Not for money or status, but to help people heal. "My mother was a nurse too," she found herself sharing. "She died when I was 20, and I promised myself I'd carry on her work. Sometimes I wonder if she'd be proud of what I've become, or if she'd want me to reach higher." Mac's eyes filled with understanding. "She'd be proud," he said with quiet certainty. "How could she not be? You're helping people every day, making them feel less alone. That's the most important work in the world." As the morning progressed, Tacy found herself seeing Mac in an entirely new light. Yes, he was shy and anxious around her, but he was also incredibly thoughtful, surprisingly funny, and possessed of a gentle wisdom that took her breath away. When he talked about books he'd read or stars he'd observed, his passion was infectious. When he asked about her work, her family, her hopes and fears, his attention was complete and genuine. Most striking of all was his innocence. Not the ignorance of someone who'd been sheltered, but the pure-heartedness of someone who still believed in goodness, who saw beauty everywhere, who approached the world with wonder rather than cynicism. During lunch, Mac accidentally knocked over his water glass, soaking the tablecloth. Instead of being embarrassed, he looked at Tacy with such genuine distress about the mess that she couldn't help but laugh. "It's just water, Mac. Alfred has probably cleaned up much worse. But I wanted everything to be perfect for you," he said earnestly. "You're the first person who's ever wanted to spend time with me, and I don't want to mess it up." The simple honesty of his words hit Tacy like a physical blow. How could someone so wonderful, so genuinely good, believe that he was somehow not worthy of companionship? How could his own parents have let him grow up thinking he was someone to be tolerated rather than treasured? "Mac," she said gently, reaching across the table to touch his hand. The moment her fingers made contact with his skin, he went very still, his eyes wide with wonder at the simple contact. "You're not messing anything up. You're perfect exactly as you are." He stared down at their joined hands as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. "You're really touching me," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. I never imagined anyone would want to touch me." Tacy's heart broke a little more. His reaction to such a simple gesture spoke volumes about the depth of his isolation. "Has no one ever hugged you, Mac? Ever held your hand?" He shook his head, still staring at their hands. "My mother used to when I was very little, but then the panic attacks started when other women came near me and everyone just stopped touching me. The doctors said it might make my condition worse." Without thinking, Tacy stood and moved around the table. Mac looked up at her with a mixture of longing and terror as she approached. "I'm going to hug you now," she said softly, "if that's okay with you." Mac nodded wordlessly, his eyes filling with tears. When Tacy wrapped her arms around him, Mac's entire body went rigid with shock, as if his nervous system couldn't process such overwhelming tenderness. Then slowly, trembling like a man touching salvation itself, his arms encircled her waist. The moment he fully embraced her, he shattered completely, not from fear, but from joy so profound it consumed him. "Thank you," he sobbed against her shoulder, his tears soaking through her blouse. "Thank you for not running away from me." Tacy held him fiercely, her own eyes burning with tears. This gentle giant who could buy anything in the world had been starving for the simplest human touch. "I could never run from you, Mac. You have the most beautiful soul I've ever known." When they finally separated, Mac's face was radiant with wonder and gratitude. Something fundamental had shifted between them. A barrier had fallen. A connection had been forged that neither of them fully understood, but both of them treasured. As the afternoon faded into evening, they found themselves in the library again, sitting closer together than before. Mac showed Tacy his favorite books, reading passages aloud in his warm, musical voice. Tacy told him stories from her work, carefully omitting the sadder cases, focusing instead on the moments of triumph and healing. When it came time for dinner, Mac actually managed to eat without spilling anything, too absorbed in their conversation to be nervous. He asked Tacy about her family, her friends, her life outside these walls, and listened to every answer as if she were revealing the secrets of the universe. "You make everything sound so interesting," he said wonderingly. "The way you describe people, places. It's like you see magic everywhere." "Maybe I do," Tacy said, looking into his beautiful green eyes. "Maybe there's more magic in the world than most people realize." As Tacy prepared for bed that night, she reflected on the day with amazement. She had come here under false pretenses, thinking she was caring for an injured man. Instead, she had found someone who was healing her own wounded heart simply by being himself. Innocent, kind, grateful for the smallest gestures of affection. She was falling for him, she realized with a mixture of joy and terror. Falling for his shy smiles, his gentle nature, his obvious intelligence, and, most of all, for the way he looked at her, as if she were something precious and miraculous. But what kind of future could they possibly have? She was a working-class nurse, and he was the heir to a fortune. More importantly, he was so innocent, so sheltered from the world. Was it fair to encourage feelings that might only end up hurting them both? As she drifted off to sleep, Tacy's last thought was of Mac's face when she had hugged him, the pure, overwhelming joy of someone experiencing human affection for the first time in years. Whatever complications lay ahead, she couldn't bring herself to regret giving him that moment of happiness. In his own room across the hall, Mac lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the day. He touched his hand where Tacy had held it, his chest where she had hugged him, and marveled at the lingering warmth of her touch. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of tomorrow, because tomorrow meant another day with Tacy, another day of her smiles and laughter and gentle kindness, another day of feeling less alone in the world. He was falling in love, though he didn't have the experience to name the feeling. All he knew was that Tacy made everything brighter, made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he was worthy of being loved in return. Chapter 3. First Feelings. The third morning of Tacy's stay dawned crisp and clear, with golden sunlight streaming through the mansion's tall windows. She woke to find a small bouquet of wildflowers outside her door, clearly picked from the estate's gardens by someone with more enthusiasm than skill, as the stems were uneven and a few petals had already fallen. A small note in careful handwriting accompanied the flowers. "Thank you for yesterday. I hope these make you smile. Mac." Tacy's heart melted as she held the imperfect bouquet to her chest. She could picture Mac sneaking through the gardens in the early morning light, carefully selecting each flower, probably worried the entire time that his gift wasn't good enough. The thoughtfulness behind the simple gesture touched her more than any expensive arrangement ever could. She found Mac in the kitchen, something that clearly surprised both him and Alfred. He was standing at the counter, flour dusting his dark hair and a look of intense concentration on his face as he attempted to flip what appeared to be a pancake. Master Mac insisted on making breakfast himself this morning, Alfred explained with fond exasperation. "I'm afraid cooking is not among his many talents." "I wanted to do something nice for Tacy," Mac said, his cheeks flushing as he noticed her in the doorway. "But I think I'm making a mess of everything." The kitchen did indeed look like a disaster zone. Flour on every surface, eggshells in the mixing bowl, and what appeared to be pancake batter on the ceiling. But Mac's earnest expression and the way he was clearly trying so hard to please her made Tacy's chest tight with emotion. "The flowers are beautiful, Mac," she said softly, moving closer to him. "No one has ever picked flowers for me before." His face lit up with pure joy. "Really? You like them? I wasn't sure which ones you'd prefer, so I picked a little bit of everything." "They're perfect, just like everything else you do." Mac ducked his head shyly, but she could see the pleased smile he was trying to hide. He attempted another pancake flip and this time succeeded, though the pancake was decidedly lopsided. "Here, let me help," Tacy said, moving to stand beside him at the stove. The proximity clearly affected Mac. She could see his hands trembling slightly as he handed her the spatula, his breathing becoming shallow when their fingers accidentally brushed. "You don't have to," he said quietly. "I know I'm not very good at anything practical." "That's not true. You're good at lots of things. Music, astronomy, making me feel special." She bumped his shoulder gently with hers, and he nearly dropped the mixing bowl. "Besides, cooking is more fun with company." Working together, they managed to produce a stack of reasonably edible pancakes. Mac was a surprisingly eager student, hanging on her every instruction as if she were teaching him the secrets of the universe. When she showed him how to test the pan's temperature with a drop of water, he watched her hand so intently that she began to feel self-conscious. "Mac, is everything all right?" I love watching your hands," he said innocently, then immediately turned scarlet. "I mean, not in a strange way, you move so gracefully, and when you do things, it all looks so easy and natural. I could watch you do anything." The simple honesty in his voice made Tacy's pulse quicken. There was something incredibly sensual about the way he looked at her, not with the calculating gaze of a man trying to seduce her, but with the wonder of someone seeing beauty for the first time. "Would you like to eat these on the terrace?" she suggested, needing some fresh air to clear her suddenly foggy thoughts. "It's such a beautiful morning." The terrace overlooked the mansion's extensive gardens, with rolling hills visible in the distance. As they settled at a small iron table, Mac seemed more relaxed than she'd yet seen him. Being outdoors appeared to ease his anxiety, and he began pointing out different flowers and trees, sharing little facts he'd learned from his extensive reading. "That's a Japanese maple," he said, gesturing toward a tree with brilliant red leaves. "In Japan, they have a tradition called momijigari, literally red leaf hunting. People travel just to see the autumn colors. I've always thought that sounded like the most beautiful kind of hunting." "Have you ever thought about traveling?" Tacy asked. "Seeing some of these places you read about?" Mac's expression grew wistful. "All the time, but I can't handle crowds or new places or—" He trailed off, looking embarrassed. "I'm pathetic, aren't I? A grown man who's afraid to leave his own house." "You're not pathetic," Tacy said firmly. "You're careful. There's a difference. But maybe someday when you're ready, you could start small. A day trip, perhaps, with someone you trust." The way Mac looked at her when she said, "someone you trust," made her stomach flutter. There was such hope in his eyes, such naked longing, that she had to look away before she did something foolish like reach across the table and kiss him. After breakfast, Mac shyly asked if she'd like to see his favorite place on the estate. He led her through the gardens to a small hill topped with an old oak tree. Beneath its spreading branches was a simple wooden bench, worn smooth by years of use. "I come here when I need to think," Mac explained as they settled on the bench together. "You can see the whole estate from here, but also the world beyond it. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like to walk down that road, to see what's on the other side of those hills." From their vantage point, they could indeed see a winding road that disappeared into the distance, leading to places Mac had only dreamed of visiting. "What would be the first place you'd want to see?" Tacy asked. Mac was quiet for a long moment. "Wherever you wanted to go," he said finally, so softly she almost missed it. I think anywhere would be beautiful if you were there with me." The confession hung in the air between them, sweet and vulnerable. Tacy felt her heart racing as she turned to look at him. Mac was staring straight ahead, his cheeks pink with embarrassment at his own boldness. "Mac," she said gently, and he finally met her eyes. The emotion she saw there, hope, fear, longing, and something deeper that took her breath away, made her realize that this sweet, innocent man was falling in love with her just as hard as she was falling for him. "I shouldn't have said that," he whispered. "I know I'm not. I know someone like you could never—" "Could never what?" "Could never care about someone like me. I'm too scared, too broken, too—" "Stop." Tacy reached over and took his hand, reveling in the way he immediately turned it, palm up to interlace their fingers. "You're not broken, Mac. You're the kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. Any woman would be lucky to have you care about her." Max stared down at their joined hands with wonder. "I've never felt this way before," he admitted. "I didn't even know I could feel this way." When you smile at me, it's like the sun coming out. When you touch me, I feel like I could do anything. Be anyone. Is that what love feels like?" The question was asked with such innocent curiosity that Tacy felt tears prick her eyes. Here was a man experiencing his first real feelings of love, and he was brave enough to name them, to ask about them, despite his obvious fear of rejection. "I think it might be," she said softly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands linked, watching clouds drift across the sky. Mac began pointing out different cloud formations, making up stories about what they looked like. His imagination was wonderfully childlike. He saw dragons and castles and sailing ships where Tacy might have seen only white puffs of vapor. "That one looks like a heart," he said suddenly, pointing to a cloud directly overhead. Tacy looked up and laughed. "Mac, that doesn't look anything like a heart. It looks like a potato." "No, look closer," he insisted, leaning toward her to point more precisely. "See the curves there and the indent at the top?" His movement brought him much closer to her, close enough that she could smell the clean scent of his soap, feel the warmth radiating from his body. When she turned to argue with him about the cloud shape, she found his face mere inches from hers. Both of them froze, suddenly aware of their proximity. Mac's eyes went wide and she could see his pulse fluttering rapidly in his throat. For a moment, neither of them moved, caught in the intensity of the moment. "Tacy," Mac whispered, her name like a prayer on his lips. She could have pulled away, should have pulled away. But something about the way he was looking at her, with such pure, overwhelming love that it took her breath away, made her stay perfectly still as he slowly, tentatively, leaned closer. Their first kiss was everything, soft, hesitant, achingly sweet, and absolutely world-shattering. Mac's lips barely brushed hers before he pulled back, emerald eyes searching her face desperately for any sign of revulsion or rejection. Was that okay?" he whispered, his voice breaking with vulnerability. Instead of words, Tacy answered by leaning forward and claiming his mouth again, this time with fierce certainty. Mac gasped against her lips, a sound of pure wonder and desperate hunger, his trembling hand rising to cup her face like she was made of precious glass. When they finally separated, Mac stared at her with such raw amazement that her heart shattered and rebuilt itself around him. "I love you," he confessed, the words tumbling out like a dam bursting. "I know it's insane, I know it's too soon, but I love you so desperately it feels like I'm drowning in it. Even if you can't love me back, even if this is all I ever get, I needed you to know that you've given me the most beautiful days of my entire existence." "Mac," she began, but he pressed on, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I know I'm not what you deserve. I know I'm scared and inexperienced and probably too strange for someone as wonderful as you. But I've never felt anything like this before, and I couldn't bear it if I didn't tell you. Even if you can't feel the same way, even if you leave tomorrow, I needed you to know that you've given me the most beautiful few days of my life." Tacy felt tears sliding down her cheeks at the raw honesty of his confession. Here was a man laying his heart completely bare, offering her everything he had despite his obvious terror of rejection. "I love you too," she whispered, watching his face transform with joy and disbelief. "You do? Really? Really? You're the most amazing man I've ever met, Mac. Your kindness, your innocence, the way you see beauty everywhere. How could I not love you?" Mac's response was to kiss her again, with more passion this time, but still infinite tenderness. When his arms came around her, holding her close, Tacy marveled at how perfectly she fit against him, how right it felt to be in his embrace. They spent the rest of the afternoon on their bench beneath the oak tree, talking and kissing, and discovering the joy of being in love. Mac was like a man reborn. His shyness didn't disappear, but it was tempered now with a quiet confidence that came from being loved and accepted exactly as he was. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Mac held Tacy close and whispered promises against her hair. Promises of devotion, of gentleness, of a love that would last forever. "I want to give you everything," he said softly. "Not money or things, but everything I am. My whole heart, my whole self. If you'll have me." Tacy looked up into his earnest green eyes and saw her future reflected there. A future filled with laughter and tenderness and the kind of love most people only dreamed of. "I'll have you," she whispered back, "for as long as you'll have me." "Forever then," Max said with absolute certainty. "Forever and always." As they walked back to the house hand in hand, both of them glowing with the joy of their new love, neither noticed Eleanor Bauman watching from an upstairs window, her expression unreadable as she observed her son's obvious happiness. The plan she and Richard had concocted was working better than they had dared hope. But as she watched Mac help Tacy navigate a particularly rocky section of the garden path, his obvious devotion and protectiveness already on full display, Eleanor began to wonder if they had unleashed something far more powerful than they had bargained for. Love, she realized with a mixture of joy and trepidation, had a way of becoming its own master plan. Chapter 4. The Truth Unveiled. The morning of Tacy's fourth day at the Bauman estate began like a fairy tale. She woke to find another small gift from Mac outside her door, this time a handwritten poem about the way moonlight looked in her eyes. The verses were simple but heartfelt, clearly written by someone pouring his entire soul onto paper. Mac had asked her to meet him in the conservatory after breakfast, and when she arrived, she found him pacing nervously among the exotic plants, his face flushed with excitement and anxiety. "I have something for you," he said shyly, producing a small wrapped package from behind his back. "It's not much, but I saw it and thought of you, and I hope you like it." Inside the wrapping was a delicate silver necklace with a small star pendant. It was beautiful in its simplicity, clearly chosen with care rather than expense in mind. "Mac, it's lovely," Tacy breathed, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "But you don't need to buy me things." "I wanted to," he said earnestly, moving behind her to help clasp the necklace around her neck. His fingers were trembling as they brushed the sensitive skin at her nape, and she could feel his breath warm against her shoulder. "I wanted you to have something beautiful, something that would remind you of us." "It's perfect," she said, turning in his arms. "Just like you." Mac's response was to kiss her with a passion that had been building over the past day. Their embraces had grown more intense, more desperate, as if both of them sensed that their perfect bubble of happiness was too good to last. They were so lost in each other that neither heard the conservatory door open nor the soft footsteps approaching. It wasn't until Eleanor Bauman cleared her throat that they sprang apart, Mac's face instantly flaming with embarrassment at being caught. "Mac, darling," Eleanor said, her tone carefully neutral. "I need to speak with Miss Cude, privately." Mac looked back and forth between his mother and Tacy, clearly reluctant to leave them alone. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing at all, sweetheart. Just some administrative details to discuss. Why don't you go practice your piano? I know how much you've been enjoying playing for Miss Cude." Only after Mac had reluctantly left, casting worried glances over his shoulder, did Eleanor's pleasant facade slip slightly. "Walk with me," Eleanor commanded, her voice like steel wrapped in silk, leading Tacy deeper into the conservatory where prying ears couldn't reach. "Mrs. Bauman, if this is about what you witnessed—" "It's about exactly what I witnessed," Eleanor sliced through her words like a blade. "And about why you're really here." Ice flooded Tacy's veins. "I'm here to help Mac recover." Eleanor's laugh was bitter as poison. "Recover from what, Miss Cude?" "Mac hasn't suffered any accident. He's perfectly healthy, physically." The words struck Tacy like lightning, even though her heart had already suspected the horrible truth. "Then why? Why did we hire you?" Eleanor's eyes glittered with desperate calculation. "Because our son is 28 and has never been able to breathe in the same room as a woman without collapsing. Because his terror of female contact has imprisoned him in this house like a beautiful, tragic ghost. Because we were drowning in desperation to find someone, anyone, who could help him overcome his condition." Tacy stared at Eleanor in horror. "You hired me to seduce your son. We hired you to help him become comfortable around women. What's happened between you two?" Eleanor's eyes flicked toward the door Mac had exited through. "Well, that's been far more successful than we dared hope. You lied to me. You told me he needed medical care. He does need care, just not the kind we led you to believe. Mac has been isolated his entire life, Miss Cude. No friends, no relationships, no normal human connections outside of family and staff. We hoped that if we could find the right woman, someone kind and patient, perhaps he could learn to interact normally." Tacy felt sick. Everything, every moment of connection, every sweet gesture, every declaration of love, suddenly felt tainted by deception. Does Mac know? Absolutely not. And he must never know. The shock would destroy him. "This is unconscionable," Tacy said, her voice shaking with anger. "He's not some experiment to be manipulated. He's a human being with feelings, with dignity. He's our son, and we love him," Eleanor said sharply. "Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your child suffer in isolation for years? To see him so terrified of half the human race that he can't even go to a restaurant or attend a social function? We did what we thought was best. By lying to him, by lying to me, by giving him a chance at happiness. Look at him, Miss Cude. In 4 days, you've transformed him. He's smiling, laughing, confident in ways we haven't seen since he was a child. Whatever our methods, the results speak for themselves." Tacy's mind reeled as she tried to process the magnitude of the deception. Every interaction with Mac suddenly took on new meaning. His surprise at her arrival, his confusion about the supposed accident, his innocent wonder at her interest in him, it all made horrible sense now. "I can't do this," she said finally. "I can't continue this charade knowing what I know now." "What exactly are you planning to do? Tell Mac the truth. Destroy his happiness. Break his heart." Eleanor's voice turned cold. "Because make no mistake, Miss Cude, that boy is completely, desperately in love with you. If you leave now, especially if you tell him why, it will shatter him. And if I stay, if I build a relationship on a foundation of lies, then you give him the only chance at love he may ever have. Mac isn't like other men, Miss Cude. His condition, his isolation. Do you really think he'll ever be able to form connections with other women? You may be his only hope for a normal life." Before Tacy could respond, they heard footsteps approaching. Both women immediately composed themselves as Mac appeared in the doorway, his face bright with happiness. "Mother, have you been telling Tacy embarrassing stories about me?" he asked with a shy smile. "She looks like she's seen a ghost." "Just discussing how much she's enjoyed her stay," Eleanor said smoothly. "Haven't you, Miss Cude?" Tacy looked at Mac's radiant face, saw the love and trust shining in his green eyes, and felt her heart break. "Yes," she managed. "It's been illuminating." "I was wondering," Mac said, moving to Tacy's side and taking her hand with casual intimacy that made her chest tight, "if you might like to have dinner in the garden tonight. Alfred said he could set up a table under the stars, and I thought it might be romantic." The hope in his voice, the way he looked at her as if she were his entire world, made Tacy want to cry. This sweet, innocent man had no idea that their entire relationship was built on a lie. "That sounds wonderful," she heard herself say. Mac's face lit up. "Really? You don't think it's too presumptuous? I know we've only known each other a few days, but I feel like I've been waiting my whole life for you." "Mac," Tacy whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I should let you two finish your conversation," Mac said, clearly sensing some tension between the women, but misinterpreting its source. "I'll go arrange everything with Alfred. Tacy, would 7 o'clock be good?" After he left, Eleanor turned to Tacy with a look of grim satisfaction. "You see? Look at what you've given him. Look at the joy in his eyes. Are you really going to take that away?" Tacy spent the rest of the day in turmoil. She walked the estate's gardens, sat by the lake, tried to think clearly about what she should do. Every option seemed to lead to pain, for Mac, for herself, for everyone involved. She thought about leaving without explanation, but knew that Mac's innocent heart would interpret her departure as rejection, would blame himself for not being worthy of love. She thought about telling him the truth, but could imagine his devastation at learning that what he thought was genuine affection had been manufactured. And underneath all her anguish was a truth she could barely acknowledge. Despite the deception that had brought them together, her feelings for Mac were completely real. His kindness, his innocence, his capacity for love. None of that had been fabricated. The man she had fallen in love with was genuine, even if the circumstances of their meeting were not. As 7 o'clock approached, Tacy made her decision. She would stay, but she would tell Mac the truth, not about his parents' deception, which would hurt him unnecessarily, but about her own feelings. She found him in the garden, nervously adjusting and readjusting the table setting Alfred had helped him prepare. Candles flickered in the gentle evening breeze, and rose petals were scattered around their chairs. It was achingly romantic, clearly planned by someone putting his whole heart into creating a perfect moment. "You look beautiful," Max said softly when he saw her, his eyes drinking in the sight of her as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. "Mac, we need to talk." Something in her tone made his face go pale. "Are you leaving?" "Please don't say you're leaving. I know I'm not much. I know I don't have anything to offer someone like you, but please..." "Stop," Tacy said, moving to him and taking his face in her hands. "Look at me. Really, look at me." Mac's eyes searched hers desperately, looking for reassurance. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly, "but I need you to understand something. When I came here, I thought I was helping someone recover from an accident. But there was no accident, was there?" Mac's brow furrowed in confusion. "No, but I don't understand why that matters. Are you upset that my parents misled you about why they wanted you here?" His innocence in the face of his parents' manipulation broke her heart all over again. He truly didn't understand the complexity of what had been done. "Mac, why do you think they brought me here?" "Because..." Mac hesitated, his cheeks flushing. "Because they could see how lonely I was. Because they wanted me to have a friend. Someone who might care about me. Because..." Mac hesitated, his cheeks flushing. "Because they could see how lonely I was. Because they wanted me to have a friend. Someone who might care about me." The simple honesty of his answer, so close to the truth, yet so far from understanding the deception involved, made Tacy's decision for her. "They brought me here because they love you," she said carefully, "and because they wanted you to be happy. But Mac, I need you to know that whatever their reasons, my feelings for you are completely real. I love you, not because anyone asked me to, not because I'm being paid to be here, but because you are the most wonderful man I've ever known." "You love me," Mac repeated wonderingly, as if the words were too beautiful to believe. "I love you," she confirmed. "Your kindness, your innocence, your beautiful heart, the way you see magic in everything, the way you make me feel like I'm the most precious thing in the world. I love all of it." Mac's response was to pull her into his arms and kiss her with desperate passion, as if he could pour all his gratitude and relief and overwhelming love into that single moment of connection. "I was so scared," he whispered against her lips. "When you said we needed to talk, I thought you were going to tell me this was all too strange, that I was too broken for someone like you to love." "Never," Tacy said fiercely. "You're not broken, Mac. You're perfect, and I'm not going anywhere." As they sat down to their romantic dinner under the stars, Tacy made herself a promise. Whatever deception had brought them together, she would spend the rest of her time with Mac, making sure he knew that her love was real. She would protect his innocent heart from the pain of knowing how his parents had manipulated them both. And maybe, just maybe, something true and beautiful could grow from ground that had been prepared with lies. "Tell me about the stars," she said softly, taking his hand across the table. Mac's face lit up with joy as he began to point out constellations, his voice warm with passion for his favorite subject. As he spoke, Tacy watched the candlelight dance across his beloved features and knew that whatever came next, this moment, this pure, perfect love, was worth everything. The truth had been unveiled, but love, she realized, was stronger than the circumstances that had created it. And Mac's innocent heart, beating so trustingly against hers, was worth protecting at any cost. Chapter 5. Sweet Surrender. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains of Tacy's room as she lay in bed, replaying the events of the previous evening. Their romantic dinner under the stars had been magical, but it was what happened afterward that had truly taken her breath away. After dinner, Mac had shyly asked if she would like to see his personal observatory, a small tower room at the top of the mansion that he had converted into his private sanctuary. When they climbed the narrow spiral staircase, Tacy found herself in the most beautiful space she had ever seen. The room was circular, with windows on all sides, offering a panoramic view of the night sky. Mac's telescope stood in the center, surrounded by star charts, astronomy books, and comfortable cushions arranged on the floor. It was intimate and magical, clearly a space where Mac felt completely at peace. "This is where I come when the world feels too big," he had whispered, his arms coming around her from behind as they stood looking out at the stars. "But with you here, it feels perfect instead of lonely." They had spent hours lying on the cushions, Mac's head pillowed on her chest, as he pointed out constellations and told her stories about Greek mythology. His voice had grown drowsy and content, and eventually he had fallen asleep in her arms, looking so peaceful and trusting that Tacy's heart had nearly burst with love. She had stayed awake long into the night, stroking his soft hair and marveling at how right it felt to hold him, to be trusted with his vulnerability. When she finally woke him gently to suggest they go to their separate rooms, Mac had looked up at her with such love and contentment that she had almost asked him to stay. Now, as she dressed for the day, Tacy could still feel the lingering warmth of his body against hers, could still smell his clean, masculine scent on her clothes. She was falling deeper in love with him every moment, and the intensity of her feelings both thrilled and terrified her. She found Mac in the music room, playing a hauntingly beautiful melody that seemed to flow directly from his heart. When he saw her, his face lit up with that radiant smile that never failed to make her pulse quicken. "Good morning. Beautiful," he said softly, rising from the piano bench to greet her. The easy endearment, so natural on his lips, made her stomach flutter. "Good morning," she replied, moving into his embrace. "That song was lovely. Did you write it?" Mac blushed, ducking his head shyly. "I started it last night after you held me in the observatory. I couldn't sleep, so I came down here and the melody just seemed to pour out of me." "Play it again," Tacy requested, settling beside him on the piano bench. "Please." As Mac's fingers danced across the keys, Tacy watched his face, captivated by the passion and emotion that transformed his features when he played. There was something deeply sensual about watching him create music, about seeing his talent and artistry on full display. When the song ended, Tacy found herself leaning closer to him, drawn by an invisible force. "Mac," she whispered, her hand coming up to trace the line of his jaw. Mac turned toward her, his green eyes darkening as he read the invitation in her expression. "Tacy," he breathed, and then his lips were on hers, kissing her with a desperation that spoke of sleepless hours spent thinking about her. This kiss was different from their previous gentle embraces. It was hungry, passionate, filled with the building tension that had been growing between them since their first meeting. Mac's hands tangled in her hair as he pulled her closer, and Tacy could feel his heart racing against her chest. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Mac's eyes were wide with wonder and something deeper, a desire he was only beginning to understand. "I've never felt anything like this before," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "When I'm with you, when you touch me, it's like there's fire in my veins. Is that normal? Is that how it's supposed to feel?" His innocent question, asked with such earnest curiosity, made Tacy's chest tight with emotion. "When you love someone the way we love each other?" "Yes," she said softly. "It's supposed to feel overwhelming and wonderful and a little scary all at once." "It does feel scary," Mac confessed, "but good scary, like standing at the edge of a cliff and wanting to jump because you know something beautiful is waiting below." They spent the morning together in easy companionship, but there was a new electricity between them, a heightened awareness of every touch and glance. When Mac helped her down from a garden wall where she had been reaching for an apple, his hands lingered at her waist longer than necessary. When she brushed a leaf from his hair during their walk, he closed his eyes and leaned into her touch as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Lunch was a quiet affair, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Mac kept stealing glances at Tacy, his cheeks flushing whenever their eyes met. Finally, he set down his fork and reached across the table to take her hand. "Tacy, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice nervous but determined. "Last night, sleeping in your arms, it was the most perfect moment of my life. And this morning, kissing you like that. I know I'm inexperienced. I know I don't understand everything about intimacy, but I want to learn with you, if you'll teach me." The vulnerability in his request, the way he was offering himself to her so completely, despite his obvious nervousness, made Tacy fall in love with him all over again. "Are you sure?" she asked gently. "We don't have to rush anything, Mac. We can take as much time as you need." "I'm sure," he said, his grip on her hand tightening. "I've waited my whole life to feel this way about someone. I don't want to wait anymore to show you how much I love you." After lunch, they found themselves back in Mac's observatory, drawn by the privacy and intimacy of the space. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting rainbow patterns on the floor as it filtered through the glass. Mac was nervous. Tacy could see it in the way his hands trembled slightly as he pulled her closer, in the rapid flutter of his pulse at his throat. But beneath the nervousness was determination and so much love that it took her breath away. "I don't know what I'm doing," he whispered as they sank down onto the cushions together. Will you show me how to make you happy?" Instead of answering with words, Tacy began to kiss him slowly, gently, letting her lips and hands teach him the language of love. Mac was an eager student, following her lead with an intuition that surprised them both. When she showed him how to touch her, where to kiss her, he absorbed every lesson with the same focused intensity he brought to everything that mattered to him. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against her skin, his voice filled with awe. "I can't believe you're real, that you're here with me like this." Their lovemaking was a symphony of tenderness and burning passion. Mac's inexperience transformed into something breathtakingly beautiful, by his desperate need to worship her. He treated her body like a sacred temple, every touch reverent yet hungry, every kiss a prayer of gratitude and desire. "You're so incredibly beautiful," he gasped against her skin, his voice raw with awe. "I can't believe you're real, that you're here letting me love you like this. You're everything I never dared dream I could touch." When she guided him through their most intimate connection, his face transformed with such overwhelming wonder and love that Tacy felt tears streaming down her cheeks. This wasn't just physical joining, it was two souls becoming one, two hearts finally finding their missing piece. "I love you," he breathed as they moved together, his emerald eyes never leaving hers, burning with devotion so fierce it consumed everything else. "I love you beyond reason, beyond breath, beyond life itself. You're my everything, Tacy, my whole universe." Afterward, they lay entwined in the afternoon sunlight, Mac's head on her chest as she stroked his hair. He was quiet for a long time, and when Tacy looked down at him, she saw tears streaming down his cheeks. "Mac, what's wrong?" she asked in alarm, immediately worried that she had somehow hurt him. "Nothing's wrong," he said, looking up at her with a smile so radiant it rivaled the sun. "Everything's perfect. I never knew I could feel this complete, this loved. You've given me something I didn't even know I was missing." He pressed a soft kiss to her heart, then rested his cheek against her skin again. "I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me," he said softly. "I want to learn everything about love, everything about you. I want to wake up in your arms every morning for the next 100 years." "I want that too," Tacy whispered, her own eyes filling with tears at the depth of emotion in his voice. As the afternoon faded into evening, they talked about everything and nothing, their childhoods, their dreams, their hopes for the future. Mac spoke tentatively about wanting to do more with his life than just manage the family fortune, about his desire to help people, to make a difference in the world. "With you beside me, I feel like I could do anything," he said. "You make me brave, Tacy. You make me want to be worthy of your love." "You already are worthy," she replied, kissing his forehead tenderly. "You're the best man I've ever known, Mac. You don't need to change anything about yourself." When they finally returned to the main house for dinner, both of them glowing with love and contentment, they found Eleanor and Richard waiting in the dining room. The older couple's knowing smiles and satisfied expressions made Tacy's stomach twist with remembered guilt about the deception that had brought them together. But as Mac took her hand across the dinner table, his thumb stroking gently over her knuckles, Tacy pushed the uncomfortable thoughts away. Whatever had brought them together, what they had now was real and beautiful and worth protecting. "You two look happy," Eleanor observed, her tone pleased. "We are," Max said simply, his eyes never leaving Tacy's face. "Happier than I ever thought possible." That night, for the first time, Mac didn't return to his own room. Instead, he stayed with Tacy, holding her close as she drifted off to sleep, whispering promises of love and devotion against her hair. "Tomorrow I want to show you the whole estate," he murmured sleepily. "Every place that's special to me, every spot where I've ever been lonely. I want to fill them all with memories of you, so that even when you're not with me, I'll be surrounded by love." "I'll always be with you," Tacy promised, meaning it with every fiber of her being. "Always, Mac." As she listened to his breathing slow and deepen, Tacy marveled at how completely her life had changed in just a few days. She had come here as a caregiver and found herself falling in love with the most wonderful man in the world. A man who loved her with such pure, overwhelming devotion that it took her breath away. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever complications arose from the circumstances of their meeting, she knew with absolute certainty that this love was worth fighting for. Mac's innocent heart, beating so trustingly against hers, was the most precious thing she had ever been given. and she would spend the rest of her life making sure he knew just how treasured he was. Chapter 6. Passionate Awakening. Tacy woke to the sensation of gentle kisses being pressed along her shoulder blade. Mac's arms were wrapped around her from behind, his warm body curved protectively around hers as the first rays of dawn filtered through the bedroom windows. "Good morning, my love," he whispered against her skin, his voice still husky with sleep. The easy endearment, spoken with such natural affection, sent warmth flooding through her entire body. Good morning," she murmured, turning in his arms to face him. Mac's hair was mussed from sleep, his green eyes soft and filled with the kind of contentment that came from a night spent wrapped in love. "How long have you been awake?" "A while," he admitted, his cheeks flushing slightly. "I kept waking up and thinking I was dreaming, that you couldn't really be here in my arms, so I stayed awake just to watch you sleep, to prove to myself it was real." The innocence of his confession, the wonder in his voice, made Tacy's heart clench with emotion. Even after everything they had shared, Mac still seemed amazed that she could love him, that she would choose to stay with him. "It's real," she assured him, leaning forward to kiss him softly. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Mac's response was to deepen the kiss, his hands tangling in her hair as he pulled her closer. Their night of lovemaking had awakened something in him, a confidence and passion that had been hidden beneath his shyness. He was still gentle, still reverent in his touch, but there was a new hunger in the way he kissed her, a desperate need that matched her own. "I love you so much," he breathed against her lips. "I want to show you. I want to learn how to make you feel as incredible as you make me feel." What followed was a morning of slow, passionate exploration as Mac discovered the joy of giving pleasure as much as receiving it. His touch was reverent but increasingly confident, his inexperience more than compensated for by his eagerness to learn and his deep desire to worship her body with his hands and lips. "Is this right?" he would ask softly, watching her face for signs of pleasure. "Do you like when I touch you here?" His earnest questions, his obvious delight when he found ways to make her gasp and arch beneath his touch, made every moment even more intense. There was something incredibly arousing about his innocent enthusiasm, his genuine amazement at her responses to his caresses. "You're perfect," Tacy whispered when he brought her to the edge of bliss with his gentle, persistent touch. "Everything you do is perfect, Mac." They made love again as the sun rose higher, this time with Mac taking the lead, his movements slow and deep, and filled with such overwhelming love that Tacy felt tears streaming down her cheeks. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both breathing hard, Mac's face buried in her neck as he tried to process the intensity of what they had shared. "I understand now," he said finally, his voice muffled against her skin. "Why people write poetry about love, why they start wars over it, why they say it can drive you mad. I feel like I could conquer the world for you, or die from happiness just from holding you like this." Breakfast was a leisurely affair taken in Mac's private sitting room, both of them wrapped in silk robes and unable to stop touching each other. Mac fed Tacy strawberries with his fingers, his eyes darkening when she sucked the juice from his thumb. Every innocent gesture had taken on new meaning, every touch electric with possibility. "I've been thinking," Mac said as they shared coffee from the same cup, "about what you said yesterday, about your dream of becoming a doctor." "Mac, no, let me finish," he said, his hand covering hers. "I know you said it's not possible because of money, but what if it could be? What if I could help make your dream come true?" Tacy felt a familiar stab of guilt at the mention of money. She was still struggling with the knowledge that she was here under false pretenses, that Mac's parents were paying her to be with him. The fact that her feelings had become genuine didn't erase the uncomfortable reality of how their relationship had begun. "I don't want your money, Mac," she said quietly. "It wouldn't be charity," he said earnestly. "It would be an investment. In us, in our future. You could go to medical school, become the doctor you've always wanted to be, and I could help you. I could learn about medicine too. Maybe find ways to use our resources to help people who can't afford health care." The passion in his voice, the way his eyes lit up as he spoke about their shared future, made Tacy's chest tight with emotion. "You'd really want to do that? Give up your comfortable life to work in medicine? With you? I'd want to do anything. You make me want to be better, to do something meaningful with my life. I've spent 28 years hiding in this house, afraid of the world. But when I'm with you, I feel brave enough to face anything." They spent the rest of the morning planning impossible dreams, the foundation they would start together, the people they would help, the life they would build based on love and service, rather than wealth and isolation. Mac's enthusiasm was infectious, his vision of their future so bright and hopeful that Tacy found herself believing it was possible. "I want to take you somewhere," Mac said suddenly, standing and pulling her to her feet. "Somewhere I've never taken anyone before." He led her through corridors she hadn't seen before, up a narrow staircase to a door marked with a small brass plaque that read, "Private." Beyond the door was a small apartment, clearly Mac's personal retreat from the formality of the rest of the house. The space was warm and comfortable, filled with books and art and personal treasures that spoke of Mac's true personality. There were photographs of him as a child, looking serious and lonely in formal portraits. Shelves lined with first-edition novels and scientific journals. A cozy reading nook by the window where he could watch the stars. "This is where I really live," Max said shyly. "Where I come when I want to be myself instead of the Bauman heir. I've never brought anyone here before, not even Alfred." Tacy was touched by the trust he was showing her, by his willingness to share this intimate space. "It's beautiful, Mac. It's so you. I was hoping you might want to stay here with me," he said, his voice nervous but hopeful. "I mean, if you're comfortable with that. I know it's presumptuous to assume you'd want to live with me, but I can't bear the thought of sleeping apart from you again." Instead of answering with words, Tacy pulled him down for a passionate kiss, pouring all her love and desire and commitment into the connection of their lips. Mac responded immediately, his hands roaming over her body with increasing confidence and hunger. They made love again on the soft rug in front of his fireplace, their passion fierce and desperate, as if they could somehow merge their souls as well as their bodies. Mac was becoming bolder, more assertive in his desire, his shy questions replaced by reverent commands. "Look at me," he whispered as they moved together, his eyes holding hers captive. "I want to see your face when I make you mine." The possessiveness in his voice, so different from his usual gentle demeanor, sent electricity racing through Tacy's veins. This was what love was doing to him, awakening not just his passion but his confidence, his sense of himself as a man worthy of being loved. Afterward, as they lay entwined before the dying fire, Mac traced lazy patterns on Tacy's bare skin. "I want to ask you something," he said softly, "but I'm afraid you'll think I'm moving too fast." "Ask me," Tacy encouraged, turning to look into his beloved face. "Marry me," he said with sudden, fierce determination, his emerald eyes blazing with love so intense it took her breath away. "I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other a week, but I love you with every fiber of my being. I love you more than I thought a human heart could love. I want to spend every heartbeat for the rest of my life proving how precious you are to me." His hands framed her face with trembling reverence. "You've given me everything. Courage, purpose, a reason to live instead of just exist. Please, my darling Tacy, let me spend forever loving you the way you deserve." Tacy's breath caught in her throat. She had felt this moment building between them like an unstoppable force of nature. Despite every complication, every secret that shadowed their beginning, there was only one answer her heart could give. "Yes," she whispered, watching his face explode with disbelief and rapture. "Yes, Mac, I'll marry you. I'll love you forever." Mac's response was to capture her mouth in a kiss so consuming, so filled with desperate gratitude and overwhelming passion, that they were soon lost in each other again, celebrating their engagement with bodies and souls completely intertwined. As evening fell, they reluctantly dressed and made their way downstairs for dinner with his parents. Mac couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop touching Tacy's hand, her arm, her back, as if he needed constant physical contact to believe their engagement was real. "You two seem even happier than usual tonight," Eleanor observed as they sat down to dinner. "We're engaged," Mac announced, his voice ringing with pride and joy. "Tacy has agreed to marry me." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor and Richard exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, Richard cleared his throat. "That's very sudden, isn't it?" he said carefully. "When you know," Mac said firmly, his arm sliding protectively around Tacy's shoulders. "I love her, and she loves me. Nothing else matters." "Mac, darling," Eleanor said gently, "don't you think you should take some time to consider this? Marriage is a very serious commitment." "I've considered it," Mac interrupted, his voice taking on a strength Tacy had never heard before. "I've thought about nothing else. Tacy is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I'm not going to let fear or convention keep me from the woman I love." The quiet authority in his voice, the way he stood up to his parents for the first time in his life, made Tacy's heart swell with pride. This was what love was doing to him, making him brave, making him strong, making him into the man he was always meant to be. "Well then," Eleanor said finally, her tone carefully neutral, "congratulations to you both." But Tacy didn't miss the worried look that passed between Mac's parents, and she couldn't shake the feeling that their happiness was about to face its first real test. That night, as they lay in Mac's bed in his private apartment, he held her close and whispered plans for their future, their wedding, their honeymoon, the children they would have, the life they would build together. "I want to give you everything," he murmured against her hair. "Not just material things, but everything I am, everything I have, my whole heart, my whole soul, my whole life." "You already have," Tacy whispered back, meaning it completely despite the secrets that still lay between them. As Mac drifted off to sleep, his arms tight around her, Tacy stared at the ceiling and wondered how long their perfect bubble of happiness could last. She was more in love with him than ever, more committed to their future together. But she couldn't shake the feeling that storms were gathering on the horizon. For now, though, she had this moment, Mac's warm body pressed against hers, his gentle breathing in her ear, his absolute trust and love surrounding her like a shield against the world. Whatever came next, she would face it with him by her side. And maybe, just maybe, their love would be strong enough to weather any storm. Chapter 7. Storms and Sunshine. The first devastating blow came 3 days after their engagement, shattering their perfect world like glass against stone. Alfred approached with visible dread, his usual composure completely destroyed. "Master Mac, forgive me, but there's a reporter on the phone making demands, threatening to publish stories. News of your engagement has leaked to the vultures, and they're circling for blood." Mac's face drained of all color, his hand crushing Tacy's as if she were his only anchor in a suddenly hostile world. How could they possibly know? The caller claimed multiple sources confirming that the Bowman heir had become involved with his hired nurse. Alfred's voice cracked on the last words. Tacy's stomach plummeted. She could already envision the headlines. The sheltered rich boy seduced by a calculating gold digger. The the working-class woman who had obviously trapped him for his fortune. The way Alfred hesitated over the last word made Tacy's stomach clench with dread. She could already imagine how the story would be framed: the wealthy, reclusive heir and the working-class woman who had obviously seduced him for his money. "I won't talk to them," Max said firmly, his arm sliding protectively around Tacy's waist. "Tell them we have no comment." But even as Alfred hurried away to deliver the message, they could both see that their private bubble of happiness had been irreparably burst. Over the next few hours, more calls came. Reporters, society columnists, even a few photographers who managed to get onto the estate grounds before security could remove them. Eleanor and Richard's reaction to the media attention was swift and decisive. They requested a family meeting that afternoon, their expressions grim as they gathered in Richard's study. "This situation is completely unacceptable," Eleanor began without preamble. "The family name is being dragged through the mud, Mac. The stories are already painting Tacy as a gold digger who seduced our vulnerable son." "Then tell them the truth," Mac said, his voice steady despite the tension radiating from his body. "Tell them that I'm the luckiest man alive because the most wonderful woman in the world agreed to marry me." "The truth is irrelevant," Richard said coldly. "What matters is perception. And right now, the perception is that you've been manipulated by a fortune hunter." Tacy felt each word like a physical blow, even though she knew there was some twisted accuracy to the accusation. She was here under false pretenses, was being paid by Mac's parents, even if her feelings had become genuine. "Don't you dare speak about Tacy that way," Mac said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge that Tacy had never heard before. "She's going to be my wife, and I won't tolerate anyone insulting her." "Mac, sweetheart," Eleanor said, switching to a gentler tone. "We're not trying to insult anyone. We're trying to protect you, both of you. This kind of media attention could destroy Miss Cude's reputation as well as yours." "What are you suggesting?" Mac asked warily. Richard and Eleanor exchanged glances before Richard pulled out a thick envelope from his desk drawer. "We think it would be best if Miss Cude took some time away from the estate. Let the media attention die down. Here's a check that should more than compensate her for the inconvenience." The sight of the check, clearly for a substantial amount, made Tacy feel physically ill. This was exactly what she had feared, the moment when Mac would realize that their entire relationship was built on financial transaction. But Mac's reaction was explosive. "How dare you?" he said, his voice shaking with rage as he stood abruptly. "How dare you try to buy her off like she's some kind of... He couldn't even finish the sentence, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Mac, we're only thinking of what's best." "What's best for me is Tacy," Mac interrupted. "What's best for me is the woman I love, who loves me in return. If you can't accept that, then maybe it's time I moved out of this house and started my own life." The threat clearly shocked his parents. Mac had never stood up to them so forcefully, had never threatened to leave the protection of the family estate. "You're being irrational," Eleanor said desperately. "You barely know this woman." "I know everything I need to know," Mac said firmly. "I know she's kind, intelligent, caring, and beautiful. I know she makes me laugh and makes me feel brave and makes me want to be a better man. I know I love her more than life itself, and that's all that matters." Richard tried a different approach. "Think about the practical aspects, Mac. You've never lived in the real world, never had to deal with the pressures and complications of life outside this estate. Are you really prepared to give up everything you've known for someone you've known for a week?" "I'm prepared to give up anything for Tacy," Mac said without hesitation. "My inheritance, this house, the family name, none of it means anything without her." Tacy's heart broke at the fierce devotion in his voice, at the way he was willing to sacrifice everything for their love. But she also saw the pain in Eleanor and Richard's eyes, the genuine fear that they were losing their son. "Mac," she said softly, speaking for the first time since the conversation began, "maybe your parents have a point. Maybe we should take some time to think about this." Mac turned to her with such shock and betrayal in his eyes that she immediately regretted the words. "You want to leave me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," she said quickly, reaching for his hands. "Never. But maybe some space would help us figure out how to handle all this pressure." "There's nothing to figure out," Max said desperately. "I love you, you love me. Everything else is just noise." But even as he spoke, Tacy could see the doubt creeping into his eyes, the old insecurities reasserting themselves. His parents' words had planted seeds of uncertainty, and she knew that was exactly what they had intended. The meeting ended with no resolution, tensions high and emotions raw. That evening, Mac was quieter than usual, clearly struggling with the weight of the day's revelations. They sat in his private sitting room, Tacy curled against his side as he stared into the fire. "They're right about one thing," he said finally. "I don't know anything about the real world. I've been sheltered and protected my entire life. What if I can't give you the life you deserve? What if I'm too weak, too inexperienced to be a good husband?" "Mac, look at me," Tacy said, turning in his arms to face him. "You are the strongest, bravest man I know. You stood up to your parents today. You defended our love. You were willing to give up everything for me. How is that weak?" "But they're right about the media attention, about the complications. I never thought about how being with me might hurt you, might damage your reputation." "I don't care about any of that," Tacy said fiercely. "The only reputation that matters to me is yours, and you are the most honorable man I've ever known." Mac's response was to kiss her with desperate passion, as if he could somehow convince himself of her love through the intensity of their physical connection. They made love that night with a fierce urgency, both of them trying to push away the doubts and fears that had been planted in their minds. The next few days brought more challenges. Someone had leaked more details about their relationship to the press, including embarrassingly accurate information about Mac's social anxiety and reclusive lifestyle. The stories painted him as a victim and Tacy as a predator, despite having no basis in fact. Mac's reaction to the coverage was to become even more protective of Tacy, even more determined to shield her from the harsh glare of public scrutiny. He refused to let her leave the estate alone, insisted on accompanying her everywhere, his obvious devotion and protectiveness touching her heart, even as it broke it. "I won't let them hurt you," he promised fiercely as they walked through the gardens, his arm tight around her waist. "I'll hire security, lawyers, whatever it takes to keep you safe." But the pressure was taking its toll on both of them. The breaking point came when a particularly vicious article appeared, questioning Tacy's motivations and suggesting that Mac was being taken advantage of by an unscrupulous gold digger. The story included quotes from unnamed sources close to the family, making it clear that someone with inside knowledge was feeding information to the press. Mac read the article in stony silence, his face growing paler with each paragraph. When he finished, he carefully folded the newspaper and set it aside. "They're never going to stop," he said quietly. "As long as we're together, they'll keep attacking you, keep trying to destroy your reputation." "I don't care," Tacy said desperately. "Let them write whatever they want. I love you, Mac. That's all that matters." "It matters to me," Mac said, his eyes filling with tears. "I can't bear the thought of you being hurt because of me. Maybe my parents are right. Maybe it would be better if we waited, if we took some time apart to let things calm down." The suggestion hit Tacy like a physical blow. "You want to break our engagement?" "I want to protect you," Max said, his voice breaking. "Even if it kills me to do it." Tacy's response was to pull him into her arms, holding him tight as he broke down completely, his body shaking with sobs of grief and frustration. "No," she said firmly. "I won't let them win. I won't let them destroy what we have." That night, she made love to Mac with desperate passion, trying to remind him of what they meant to each other, trying to rebuild his confidence with her touch and her words. "You are everything to me," she whispered as they moved together in the darkness. "Nothing they write, nothing they say can change that. I choose you, Mac. I choose our love, always." When he finally fell asleep in her arms, exhausted by emotion and passion, Tacy lay awake making plans. She couldn't let the outside world destroy Mac's newfound confidence, couldn't let his parents' fears and society's prejudices rob him of the happiness he deserved. The next morning, she made a decision that would change everything. "I want to hold a press conference," she announced at breakfast, her voice calm and determined. "I want to tell our story, the real story, to anyone who will listen." Mac's eyes went wide with panic. "Tacy, no. You can't. The attention, the scrutiny." "Let them scrutinize," she said firmly. "Let them see how much we love each other, how real this is. I'm not ashamed of our relationship, Mac. I'm proud of it. Proud of you." "But what if they ask hard questions? What if they try to make you look bad?" "Then you'll be right there beside me," Tacy said, reaching for his hand. "We'll face them together, just like we'll face everything else in our lives." The idea terrified Mac, but Tacy could see the appeal of it too. The chance to finally tell their side of the story, to show the world that their love was real and pure and worth defending. "Together?" he asked, his voice small but hopeful. "Together," Tacy confirmed. "Always together." As they planned their strategy, Mac's confidence began to return. The idea of fighting back, of defending their love publicly, seemed to awaken something in him, a strength he didn't know he possessed. "I love you," he said that afternoon as they practiced what they would say to the press, "for making me brave enough to fight for us." "You were always brave," Tacy replied. "You just needed to remember it." The press conference was scheduled for the next day, and as they prepared for what would be the most challenging day of their relationship so far, both of them knew that their love was about to face its greatest test. But they also knew they would face it together, and that made all the difference. Chapter 8: Building Dreams Together. The morning of the press conference dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was offering encouragement for what lay ahead. Tacy woke early to find Mac already dressed, standing at the window of their bedroom and staring out at the garden where they had first kissed. "Having second thoughts?" she asked softly, moving to slip her arms around him from behind. "About the press conference, yes. About you? Never." He leaned back into her embrace, drawing strength from her presence. "I keep thinking about what you said yesterday, about being proud of our love. I want to feel that way too. I want to stand up in front of the world and tell them how lucky I am to have you." The press conference was set for 2 o'clock in the estate's main drawing room. As the hour approached, Mac's anxiety was nearly overwhelming, but beneath it burned an unshakable determination. He wore his finest suit-like armor, wanting to project dignity and strength for the cameras. "You look magnificent," Tacy assured him as they prepared to face the media storm. "Just remember, we're not defending anything. We're sharing the most beautiful love story ever told." When they entered the drawing room, hand in hand, camera flashes exploded like lightning. Mac flinched at the assault but straightened his shoulders, drawing strength from Tacy's unwavering presence beside him. The questions came fast and vicious, designed to draw blood. But something extraordinary happened as Mac began responding. Instead of the stammering, terrified man he had always been around strangers, he spoke with quiet authority about his love for Tacy, his voice growing stronger and more confident with every word. "Miss Cude, what do you say to accusations that you're only interested in Mr. Bauman's money?" one reporter called out. Tacy looked directly into the camera as she answered. "I say that anyone who truly knew Mac would understand that his money is the least interesting thing about him. He's kind, intelligent, talented, and has the most beautiful heart of anyone I've ever met. I fell in love with the man, not his bank account. Mr. Bauman, your parents have expressed concerns about this relationship. How do you respond? Mac's hand tightened on Tacy's as he answered with surprising steadiness. My parents love me and want what's best for me. What's best for me is Tacy. She's made me happier than I ever thought possible, braver than I ever imagined I could be. I hope in time my parents will see what I see, that she's the best thing that's ever happened to our family. The questions continued for an hour, but gradually the tone shifted. Something about Mac's obvious sincerity, his genuine love for Tacy, seemed to win over even the most skeptical reporters. When one journalist asked about their wedding plans, Mac's face lit up with such pure joy that several people in the room actually smiled. We want a small ceremony, he said, something intimate and meaningful, surrounded by the people who matter most to us. Tacy has made me understand that the best things in life aren't about grandeur or show. They're about love and connection and building something beautiful together. After the press conference, Mac was exhausted, but exhilarated. I can't believe I did that, he said wonderingly as they retreated to their private apartment. I can't believe I actually spoke to all those people without falling apart. I can, Tacy said, pulling him down for a passionate kiss. You were magnificent, so strong, so articulate. I was so proud of you. The coverage of their press conference was overwhelmingly positive. The genuine love between them was impossible to deny, and Mac's obvious transformation from reclusive heir to devoted fiancé captured the public's imagination. Within days, they were being hailed as a fairy tale romance, with supportive messages pouring in from around the world. Eleanor and Richard's reaction was more complicated. They watched the news coverage in silence, their expressions unreadable. Finally, Eleanor spoke. I have to admit, she said slowly, you handled that beautifully, Mac. Both of you. You don't sound entirely pleased, Mac observed, his arm protectively around Tacy's waist. I'm proud of you, Richard said gruffly, but I'm also terrified. You've opened your private life to the world, son. There's no going back from that. I don't want to go back, Max said firmly. I want to move forward with Tacy toward the life we're going to build together. Over the following weeks, that life began to take shape in ways that amazed them both. Mac threw himself into planning their wedding with the same passionate intensity he brought to everything that mattered to him. But more importantly, he began to engage with the world beyond the estate in ways he never had before. I want to see where you grew up, he announced one morning. I want to meet your friends, see your apartment, understand the life you had before you came here. The trip to Tacy's neighborhood was Mac's first venture into the wider world in years, and Tacy watched him nervously as they drove through streets that were a far cry from the manicured perfection of his estate. But Mac's reaction surprised her. Instead of fear or discomfort, he showed genuine fascination with everything he saw. It's so alive, he said wonderingly as they walked through the bustling market near Tacy's apartment building. All these people living their lives, working, laughing, struggling. It's beautiful. Tacy's friends were initially suspicious of the wealthy man who had swept their friend off her feet, but Mac's obvious nervousness and genuine desire to fit in won them over quickly. He listened intently to their stories, asked thoughtful questions about their lives, and by the end of the evening, they were treating him like family. He's not what I expected, Tacy's best friend Monica confided as they prepared to leave. He's so real, so genuinely sweet. I can see why you love him. The transformation in Mac was remarkable. Each new experience, each person he met, seemed to add another layer of confidence to his growing sense of self. He began talking about traveling, about seeing the world beyond his sheltered existence. "I want to take you to Japan to see the cherry blossoms," he said one evening as they planned their honeymoon, "and to Norway for the northern lights. All those places I used to dream about, I want to see them with you." Their physical relationship continued to deepen as well. Mac's initial innocence had given way to a passionate confidence that took Tacy's breath away. He worshipped her body with an intensity that spoke of his deep gratitude for her love, his amazement that someone so wonderful could be his. "I love watching you discover yourself," Tacy whispered one night as they lay entwined after particularly passionate lovemaking. "I love seeing you become the man you were always meant to be." "I was nothing before you," Mac replied, his hands tracing reverent patterns on her skin. "Just a scared boy hiding in a mansion. You've given me everything: courage, purpose, a reason to become worthy of your love." They began making concrete plans for their future together. Mac established a charitable foundation focused on healthcare accessibility, with Tacy as its director. They toured potential locations for medical clinics, met with doctors and nurses who shared their vision of bringing quality healthcare to underserved communities. "This is what I want to do with my life," Mac said as they visited a free clinic in the city. "Not just manage money that I inherited, but use it to make a real difference. With you beside me, I feel like we could change the world." Their wedding planning became a joyful, collaborative effort. Mac insisted on including elements that honored Tacy's background and beliefs, while Tacy made sure that the ceremony reflected Mac's love of astronomy and music. They designed their own vows, spent hours crafting words that would capture the depth of their commitment to each other. "I want to promise you more than just love," Mac said as they worked on their vows. "I want to promise you adventure, growth, a partnership that will make us both better people." The night before their wedding, as they lay in bed together for what would be their last night as an unmarried couple, Mac turned to Tacy with tears in his eyes. "I need to tell you something," he said softly. "Something I've never told anyone." Tacy's heart clenched with sudden fear. "What is it?" "I used to think about dying," Mac confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not suicide exactly, but I used to wonder what the point was of living if I was going to spend my whole life alone, afraid, cut off from everything that makes life worth living." "Mac," Tacy breathed, her heart breaking for the pain he had carried for so long. "But then you came," he continued, his eyes shining with tears and love. "And suddenly I understood what I was living for. You saved me, Tacy. Not just from loneliness, but from myself. You gave me a reason to be brave, to grow, to become the man I never thought I could be." Tacy's response was to kiss him with all the love and gratitude and fierce protectiveness she felt. They made love that night with desperate tenderness, both of them overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had found together. "Tomorrow you'll be my wife," Mac whispered as they held each other in the darkness. "Tomorrow we start our real life together." "We already started it," Tacy replied, "the moment you looked at me in that library and decided to trust me with your heart." As dawn broke on their wedding day, both of them woke with a sense of completion, of a journey that had brought them to exactly where they were meant to be. Mac was no longer the frightened, isolated man who had hidden from the world in his mansion. Tacy was no longer the lonely nurse who had accepted a job caring for a stranger. They were two souls who had found their perfect match, their missing piece, their reason for being. And in a few hours they would promise to love each other forever, a promise they had already been keeping since the day they met. The transformation was complete. Love had not only awakened them to each other, but to themselves, to their potential, to the beautiful life they could build together. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 9. Forever Promises. 8 months had passed since their engagement, 8 months of careful preparation, gradual exposure therapy for Mac's social anxiety, and countless small victories in his journey toward confidence. Their wedding had been postponed twice, not from doubt, but from Mac's need to feel truly ready to stand before a crowd, even a small one. The morning of their wedding dawned with perfect golden light. Tacy woke alone in her room. Mac had insisted on the traditional separation, wanting their first sight of each other to be the moment she walked toward their future together. She found a note slipped under her door, written in Mac's careful handwriting. "Today I marry my best friend, my greatest love, my whole world. I can't wait to see you walk toward our future together. Forever yours, Mac." Attached was a single white rose from their garden, still damp with morning dew. Tacy pressed it to her heart, already emotional before the day had truly begun. Monica arrived early to help her prepare, bringing stylists that Mac had secretly arranged. "He wanted you to feel like a princess," Monica explained, "but he also said to tell you that to him, you're already more beautiful than any princess could ever be." The wedding dress Mac had chosen was a masterpiece of simplicity and elegance. Flowing silk that moved like water, delicate lace that caught the light, and a veil that had belonged to his grandmother. When Tacy looked in the mirror, she gasped at her own reflection. "You look like you stepped out of a fairy tale," Monica whispered, tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, across the estate, Mac was having his own moment of overwhelming emotion. Alfred was helping him with his cufflinks when he caught sight of himself in the mirror. No longer the frightened, uncertain man he had been, but someone confident and radiant with happiness. "You look like your father did on his wedding day," Alfred said softly. "Nervous, but so full of joy you could light up the world." "I can't believe this is really happening," Mac said, his voice thick with emotion. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It's real, Master Mac, and you deserve every moment of happiness you're about to receive." The ceremony was being held in the estate's rose garden, transformed into a magical outdoor cathedral with flowers and lights and flowing white fabric. The guest list was small but meaningful: family, close friends, and colleagues from the medical community. As guests took their seats, Mac stood at the altar with tears already flowing. Despite all his progress, he still felt overwhelmed by the attention. But this time, the anxiety was manageable, tempered by overwhelming joy and the certainty that Tacy would soon be his wife. When the garden doors opened and Tacy appeared, Mac's carefully maintained composure nearly crumbled. His hands trembled slightly, a remnant of his old nervousness, but his smile was radiant and confident. She was so beautiful, so radiant, that for a moment he forgot how to breathe. But it wasn't just her physical beauty that overwhelmed him. It was the love shining in her eyes, the smile meant only for him, the way she moved toward him as if he were the only person in the world. Tacy had asked her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to walk her down the aisle, the woman who had been like a mother to her. As they moved slowly through the rose petals scattered on the path, Tacy's eyes never left Mac's face. He looked magnificent in his tailored black suit, his green eyes shining with tears and love and wonder. This beautiful man who had been so afraid of the world was now standing confidently before their friends and family, waiting to promise her forever. When Mrs. Patterson placed Tacy's hand in Mac's, he lifted their joined hands to his lips and kissed her fingers gently. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, his voice shaking with emotion. "So perfect. I love you so much." The ceremony began with words about love and commitment, but everyone present could see that Mac and Tacy were lost in each other, their own private world of overwhelming emotion and joy. When it came time for their vows, Mac went first, his voice clear and powerful, despite tears flowing freely down his face. "Tacy," he began, his emerald eyes blazing with devotion, 6 months ago, I was drowning in darkness, suffocating on fear, dying slowly in isolation. Then you exploded into my world like sunlight after endless winter, and everything changed forever. You didn't just love me, you resurrected me. You didn't just see past my terror, you gave me the courage to conquer it. You didn't just believe in who I could become, you loved me into becoming that man. His voice broke with overwhelming emotion before rising stronger than ever. I promise to love you with every breath I draw, every heartbeat I possess. I promise to grow beside you, adventure with you, build impossible dreams with you. I promise to be worthy of the miracle of your love every single day until my last. You are my salvation, my purpose, my everything. Today, tomorrow, and for all eternity. The garden fell silent except for the sound of tears falling. Tacy was sobbing so hard she could barely stand, but when her turn came, her voice rang clear as crystal. "Mac," she said, "when I first met you, I thought I was there to take care of you. I had no idea that you were going to be the one to heal me. Your gentleness showed me what true strength looks like. Your innocence reminded me what pure love feels like. Your courage in opening your heart to me gave me the courage to open mine to you." She paused to wipe away tears before continuing. "I promise to love you not just for who you are today, but for who you're still becoming. I promise to stand beside you as we face the world together, to support your dreams and share in your adventures. I promise to cherish your beautiful heart, to protect your gentle soul, and to spend every day of my life making you as happy as you've made me. You are my greatest love, my dearest friend, my partner in everything, forever and always." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Mac was already reaching for Tacy before the words, "You may kiss the bride," were spoken. Their kiss was passionate and desperate and filled with so much love that everyone watching felt like they were witnessing something sacred. "My wife," Mac whispered against her lips, as if testing the words. "My beautiful wife." "My husband," Tacy replied, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "My wonderful, amazing husband." The reception was a joyful celebration of their love. Mac, who had never danced with anyone in his life, waltzed with Tacy as if they had been dancing together forever. He couldn't stop touching her hand, her face, her waist, needing constant reassurance that she was really his. During dinner, Mac stood to give a speech that had everyone in tears. "I used to think that love was something that happened to other people," he said, his arm around Tacy's waist. "I thought I was broken, that I would spend my life alone. But Tacy showed me that love isn't something you find. It's something you build day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. She chose to love me when I couldn't love myself. She chose to stay when it would have been easier to leave. She chose to see the man I could become instead of the boy I was." He turned to look at Tacy, his eyes shining. "My darling wife, you have given me everything: love, courage, purpose, hope. I will spend the rest of my life trying to give you even a fraction of the happiness you've given me." As the evening wound down, Mac and Tacy prepared to leave for their honeymoon suite, Mac's observatory, transformed into a romantic retreat with flowers and candles and silk drapes. "Are you ready, Mrs. Bauman?" Mac asked softly as they prepared to leave the reception. "I've been ready for this my whole life," Tacy replied. "I just didn't know it until I met you." Their wedding night was magical beyond words. They made love with desperate passion and infinite tenderness, both overwhelmed by the significance of their promises, the depth of their connection, the sheer joy of belonging completely to each other. "I can't believe you're really mine," Mac whispered as they lay entwined afterward, the stars visible through the glass ceiling above them. "I can't believe I get to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." "Believe it," Tacy said, pressing soft kisses to his chest. "We're married, Mac." We're really, truly married. Nothing can separate us now." They spent their honeymoon traveling to all the places Mac had dreamed of seeing. Japan for the cherry blossoms, Norway for the northern lights, Italy for the art and architecture. But more than the destinations, it was the journey itself that mattered. Watching Mac experience the world for the first time, seeing his wonder and excitement and growing confidence filled Tacy with indescribable joy. "I never understood what I was missing," Mac said one evening as they walked through the streets of Rome, his arm around her waist. "I thought staying safe meant staying hidden. But real safety is this: being with someone who loves you enough to help you be brave." 3 weeks later, they returned home to begin their married life in earnest. Mac had purchased a beautiful house not far from the estate, close enough to visit his parents regularly, but far enough to have their own space, their own life. Their days fell into a rhythm of work and love and simple domestic happiness. They ran their foundation together, Mac's business acumen combined with Tacy's medical knowledge, creating something powerful and meaningful. They cooked dinner together, read books aloud to each other, made love with the desperate passion of people who couldn't quite believe their good fortune. "I want to have children with you," Mac said one evening as they cuddled on their sofa. "I want to give them all the love and freedom I never had. I want to watch you be a mother." "How many children?" Tacy asked, smiling at the wonder in his voice. "As many as you want to give me," he replied without hesitation. "A houseful. I want our home to be full of laughter and love and little feet running around." 2 months after their wedding, their wish began to come true. Tacy woke one morning feeling queasy, and when she realized what it might mean, her heart raced with excitement and terror. The pregnancy test was positive. When she told Mac, he stared at her in shock before sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around the kitchen, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. "We're going to have a baby," he kept repeating, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "We're going to be parents. Oh God, Tacy, what if I'm terrible at it? What if I don't know how to be a father?" "You'll be amazing," Tacy assured him, her hands on his face. "You'll be the most loving, devoted father in the world. Our baby is so lucky to have you." Max spent the next several months treating Tacy like precious glass, monitoring her every breath, reading every book about pregnancy and childbirth he could find. His excitement and nervousness were endearing, his constant attention and care making Tacy fall even more in love with him. As Tacy's due date approached, Mac became increasingly anxious, but also more excited than she had ever seen him. He had transformed the nursery into a wonderland of soft colors and gentle music, with a mobile of stars and planets hanging over the crib. "Everything is ready," he said one evening as they stood in the completed nursery. "Now we just wait for our miracle to arrive." Neither of them could have imagined the drama that awaited them in the delivery room, the moment when their perfect happiness would be threatened by circumstances beyond their control. But for now, they were simply two people deeply in love, preparing to welcome their first child into a world made beautiful by their devotion to each other. The fairy tale was about to face its greatest test. Chapter 10. Life and Death. 18 months after their wedding, their dream of parenthood was about to become reality. The pregnancy had been planned and celebrated, with Mac attending every doctor's appointment, reading every book about fatherhood, and transforming their spare room into a perfect nursery. The first contractions began at 3 in the morning, gentle waves that woke Tacy from peaceful sleep. "Mac," she whispered softly, touching his shoulder. "Sweetheart, wake up. I think it's time." Mac's eyes flew open immediately, his face cycling through confusion, realization, and then pure panic. "Time? You mean now? The baby is coming now?" He sat up so quickly he nearly fell out of bed, scrambling for his clothes. "Yes, now," Tacy said with a gentle laugh, despite the tightening sensation in her abdomen. "But calmly, my love. We have time." Mac was already in full protective mode, gathering their hospital bag, his hands shaking as he helped Tacy into her coat, his green eyes wide with excitement and terror. "Are you in pain? How bad is it? Should I call an ambulance?" he asked frantically. "Mac." Tacy took his face in her hands. "Breathe. Everything is going to be fine. We're going to meet our baby today." The drive to the hospital was surreal, Mac gripping the steering wheel while trying to hit every green light. He kept glancing over at Tacy, timing her contractions with obsessive precision. At the hospital, Mac transformed into a whirlwind of nervous energy. He hovered over Tacy, questioned every procedure, double-checked every medication. His obvious devotion and barely contained panic made the medical staff smile. "First baby?" asked Dr. Chen, their obstetrician. "Yes," Mac answered immediately. "Everything's normal, right? The baby's okay? Tacy's okay?" "Everything looks perfect, Doctor," Chen assured him. "Try to relax, Dad. Your job now is just to support Mom." The early hours of labor progressed normally, with Mac never leaving Tacy's side. He held her hand through each contraction, whispered words of encouragement, brushed her hair back with infinite tenderness. "You're so strong," he murmured. "So incredibly strong. I love you so much, Tacy." "Tell me about the stars," Tacy gasped between contractions, seeking comfort in his voice. Mac's face lit up despite his worry, and he began painting pictures with words about constellations and galaxies, his voice providing steady anchor as the hours passed. As the labor intensified, Mac's nervousness reached new heights. He paced when Tacy didn't need him, questioned every decision, and nearly fainted when the epidural needle appeared. "Mac, sit down," Tacy finally said. "You're making everyone nervous." "I can't sit down," he said, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "What if something goes wrong? What if I can't protect you?" But as the minutes dragged by, everything went catastrophically wrong. The baby's heart rate plummeted despite every intervention, and Dr. Chen's face transformed into a mask of grave concern. "We have a critical emergency," she announced tersely. "The umbilical cord is wrapped around the baby's neck multiple times, and your wife is hemorrhaging severely. We need to get this baby out immediately and stop the bleeding." Mac's world tilted sideways. "Are they going to be okay? Tell me they're going to be okay." "I won't lie to you," Dr. Chen said as nurses rushed around them with equipment. "This is extremely dangerous for both mother and baby. The next few minutes are critical. We're going to do everything in our power to save them both. But I need you to understand how serious this is." Mac felt like he was drowning. "What can I do? There has to be something I can do." "Pray," Dr. Chen said simply as she prepared for emergency procedures. "And trust us to fight for them." Mac collapsed into the chair beside Tacy's bed, his face in his hands as sobs racked his body. "Please," he begged, looking up at Dr. Chen with tears streaming down his face. "Please don't let me lose them. They're my whole world. I can't live without either of them." The next few minutes became an eternity of pure hell. Mac held Tacy's trembling hand, while Dr. Chen and her team waged war against death itself, their voices urgent but controlled as they fought with everything they possessed. Mac prayed with desperate, innocent faith that shook the heavens, offering his soul, his fortune, his very existence to any power that would listen. "Please," he sobbed over and over, his tears falling like rain onto Tacy's hand. "Please don't take them from me. I'll give you anything, everything I am, everything I own. Just let them both live. Please, God, please." His pure, broken-hearted faith seemed to inspire the medical team to superhuman efforts. They attempted procedures that defied logic, took risks that shouldn't have worked, pushed beyond every limitation. And then, impossible and miraculous, the baby's heart rate surged back to life. "I've got it," Dr. Chen shouted triumphantly. The cord is free. Heart rate is stabilizing. We're back. The delivery that followed was swift and fierce. With one final, tremendous push from Tacy and one last desperate prayer from Mac, their son James burst into the world with a cry so strong and healthy it sounded like angels singing. "He's absolutely perfect," Dr. Chen announced, holding up their squirming, crying miracle. 10 fingers, 10 toes, powerful lungs, and completely healthy. Max stared at his son in complete wonder, tears of joy replacing the tears of terror. "He's alive," he whispered in amazement. "They're both alive. It's a miracle." But even as he reached for his baby, Max's attention focused on Tacy, who had gone very still and pale on the delivery table. "Tacy," he said, his voice tight with renewed fear. "Tacy, talk to me." Dr. Chen was working quickly, her hands pressing against Tacy's abdomen as nurses rushed to bring additional equipment. "She's hemorrhaging," she said tersely. "We need to get this bleeding stopped now." Mac felt his world threatening to crumble again. Even with their son safe in his arms, the thought of losing Tacy was unbearable. "Do something," he pleaded. "Please, she has to be okay. She has to see our baby grow up." The next 20 minutes were agony. Mac held his newborn son, who had quieted to small, content sounds, while watching the medical team fight to save his wife's life. He whispered to the baby about his beautiful mommy, about how much she loved him already. "Your mommy is the strongest, most amazing woman in the world," he told James softly. "She's going to be okay. She has to be okay because I don't know how to raise you without her." Finally, blessedly, Dr. Chen stepped back with a sigh of relief. "We've got it under control," she announced. "The bleeding has stopped. She's going to be fine." Mac's legs nearly gave out with relief. "Are you sure? She's really going to be okay?" "She's exhausted and she'll need time to recover, but yes, she's going to be completely fine. You can relax now, Dad. Your family is safe." As Tacy began to wake up from the haze of exhaustion and medication, the first thing she saw was Mac's face, streaked with tears but radiant with joy, holding their perfect baby son. "Is he okay?" she whispered weakly. "Our baby. Is he healthy?" "He's perfect," Max said, his voice thick with emotion as he carefully placed James in her arms. "Just like his mommy. You did it, Tacy. You brought our son into the world, and you're both going to be fine." Tacy looked down at their baby's perfect little face and felt her heart expand beyond anything she had thought possible. James had Mac's green eyes and her dark hair, and when he looked up at her, she could swear he was smiling. "Hello, my beautiful boy," she whispered, touching his tiny hand with one finger. "I'm your mommy, and this is your daddy, and we love you more than all the stars in the sky." Mac sat on the edge of the bed, his arms around both his wife and son, and for the first time since the nightmare had begun, he allowed himself to truly believe that they were all safe. "I thought I was going to lose you both," he admitted, his voice breaking with remembered terror. "When the doctor said how dangerous it was, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. You two are my entire life." "But we're here," Tacy said softly, leaning against his shoulder. "We're all here, and we're all safe. Our family is complete." As they sat together in the quiet hospital room, Mac holding his wife and son in the circle of his protective arms, he marveled at the impossible journey that had brought them here. A year ago, he had been a terrified, broken man hiding from life itself. Now he was a husband and father, surrounded by more love than he had ever dared imagine possible. "Thank you," he whispered to Tacy, his voice thick with overwhelming gratitude. "For saving me, for loving me, for giving me this incredible life, for our perfect son." "Thank you," she replied, her eyes shining with tears of pure joy, "for showing me what true love looks like." for being the most wonderful husband and the father our son will ever need." Little James stirred in his mother's arms, making soft sounds that made both parents smile through their tears of joy. "Welcome to the world, James Bauman," Max said softly, touching his son's tiny cheek with infinite tenderness. "You are so loved, so wanted, so precious. Your mommy and daddy will spend our lives making sure you know how special you are, how much you mean to us." As dawn painted the hospital room in golden light, the three of them rested together, Max's innocent heart finally complete, surrounded by the family he had never dared dream he could have. The shy, frightened man who had fallen in love with his nurse had become a devoted husband and father, his love having conquered fear, death, and every obstacle in their path. Their love story was complete, but their beautiful life together was just beginning.